Welcome to the Microsoft Windows 95 Traincast series. Learn how to plan, design, and deploy your Windows 95 rollout.
Hi, I'm Nancy Lewis, Director of Microsoft's Education and Certification Division here in Redmond, Washington. The Traincast series is for business and technical professionals considering the migration to Windows 95. Over the next several weeks, we'll help you answer some key questions like why migrate to Windows 95 and how to support your users once you're there. We'll also give you under-the-hood technical information on how to plan and manage your company's move to Windows 95, including issues like setup and installation, network integration, system administration and tools, and printing. Today, in the first program of the Traincast series, Windows 95 for the IS and Network Professional, you will learn how Windows 95 can reduce your end-user support burden, how Windows 95 helps you increase IS control over the desktop, and how to increase end-user productivity with Windows 95. Critical information in planning the move to Windows 95. Today's program will be led by two members of the Windows 95 technical team, Stephen Guggenheimer and Bob Taniguchi. Stephen and Bob will bring you lots of amazing computer demos. But now we are using Windows 95 beta software, and as with all beta software, we may experience some turbulence, so please bear with us during any bumpy spots. Today's session will run for 2 hours, and we'll have a break about halfway through. Now, let's go to Stephen and Bob in the studio.
Thank you. Bob and I want to welcome you today to Windows 95 for the Network and IS Professional. Bob and I are part of the Windows 95 team here in Redmond, Washington, and in fact, we're part of a group that's sole responsibility is to help corporations and businesses migrate to Windows 95. So what we'd like to do today is help you in beginning to understand what's behind the migration to Windows 95 and understand some of the benefits and features that are available from a corporate perspective as opposed to an end-user perspective. Now, in developing this demonstration, we assume that all of you are IS managers or somehow related to the installation, support, training of computers in a networked environment, either your own company or that of other companies. So for those of you who are expecting a real glitzy and glossy end-user demo with lots of multimedia, this probably isn't the correct demo. But for those of you who are looking to see how Windows 95 might integrate with your existing network, then you're in the right place. So we'll give everybody a few minutes to shuffle around, and I think we're all in the right place now. We'll go ahead and get started. What Bob and I want to do today is kind of give you an overview of how Windows 95 is going to help improve your job in your corporation and how it's going to have a positive impact on your overall business. So our agenda for today and what we want to do is first, we want to go through an introduction to Windows 95. Basically, I'm sure you've read some about it and seen some information, but I want to make sure we're all on a level playing field and have the same information to start with. So after we cover the basic introduction to Windows 95, then we'll go into a long section on the benefits of Windows 95 for you and your organization. Now, during this portion of the discussion, we'll do a lot of demonstrations because the best way to show you or to talk about Windows 95 is to show it to you, and that's why we have all these machines set up for you today. After that, we'd like to talk a little bit about justifying the move. We recognize that ultimately moving to Windows 95 is a business decision, and you'll need some justification. So we want to show you some of the work that's been started in that area and will be ongoing. Finally, we want to talk a little bit about migration issues. Since we know that moving a large number of PCs from Windows 3.1 to Windows 95 is a big deal, we'll talk a little bit about the migration issues and what we're doing and including in the product. And then finally, we'll wrap up with the next steps, the next things that we're doing here at Microsoft, as well as the next things you can be doing going forward. Now, as most of you know, most large products start off with a mission statement or a roadmap by which the developers work by. This is the case in Windows 95. We created the mission statement over 2 years ago, and this has been the roadmap that our developers have worked towards over the last couple of years. To start with, we separate our mission into 3 groups. The first group of people is the end users. With over 60 million users of Windows by the time we launch Windows 95, this is a large audience. And for all of these people, we want to make it easier for them to get more out of their PC, to unlock the potential of their PC. And this means from the most inexperienced user to the most experienced user, we want to make working under Windows 95 a better experience and a more productive experience so they can get more value out of their time on the PC and have it be a more fun and interactive experience. Second group of people are yourselves, which are our IS professionals. We want to help you reduce the cost of PCs deployment. We all know that around 80% of the cost of owning and maintaining PCs in the company isn't in the hardware and the software. It's in the training, it's in the upgrades, it's in the changes and managing the network. And we want to help you reduce that cost. Besides just reducing that cost, we want to help you get more out of your investment by making your end users more productive and helping you get more value out of your time. So we not only help you reduce the cost of PC deployment, but help you get a better return on your investment. And lastly, for our industry partners, our hardware and software vendors, we want to make it easier to integrate hardware under Windows 95. Both peripherals and new computers, we want to make it easier to integrate pieces together. So adding a modem is a much easier thing going forward, or a monitor, or any other peripheral device. And for our hardware developers, or our software developers, we want to enable a great new API set so they can develop great new applications for end users. Ultimately, we want to help make end users more productive, and by having a richer API set and a more powerful operating system, software vendors can create great new software for end users and tools for yourselves. Now, with this mission statement, our development team has gone off and developed what has become Windows 95. So why don't we talk a little bit about what Windows 95 is? To start with, Windows 95 is the successor to the MS-DOS, Windows, and Windows for Workgroups products lines. Now, being the successor to all these products has a lot of meaning, because there's a lot of things we just have to do in order to be the successor. These are the gotta-haves. These are things that we know you're counting on if you're ever even going to consider migrating to Windows 95. To start with, we have to be compatible with your existing MS-DOS and Windows drivers and applications. We recognize that you've put a lot of time and money into creating and working with existing applications for MS-DOS and Windows, and we can't suddenly render those incompatible. So we have to be compatible with what you have today. We have to work on a fairly common platform. Our goal for Windows 95 is to run on a 386 DX with 4 megabytes of RAM, as well as you can run Windows 3.1 today. And obviously, as your hardware scales, Windows 95 will scale much better than Windows 3.1 did. So we'll make sure that we can operate on a fairly common platform base and still give you new features. Now, we recognize if we're going to ask you to move to Windows 95 from your current operating system, it has to be more reliable. We can't ask you to transition from Windows 3.1 to Windows 95 if it's not a more reliable, more robust operating system. So we work very hard on that. And lastly, we recognize that in making the computer more efficient and making it more user-friendly through changes in the user interface and architecture, we can't have this be a huge relearning curve for all of your end users. We know you've put a lot of effort into training them and getting them proficient, so we have to make the transition to new things manageable and easy. So those are the gotta-haves. Those are the things we just have to do in order to be the successor to what you have today. Now, on top of that, there's a lot of things we want to do to make it a more robust and easier operating system. And in fact, some of the other benefits that we talk about for Windows 95, we've separated into a few categories. To start with, Windows 95 needs to make the computer even easier. It needs to be easier to do whatever it is you want to do. Whether it's starting an application, working online, using remote access, it needs to be easier. In this area, we've improved our user interface. There's a lot of work and things that can be done to make the user interface more intuitive, and we've spent a lot of time making those changes and making those improvements. We've also made it easier to integrate peripherals. Taking advantage of plug-and-play architecture, which I'll come back to a little later, we've made it much easier to integrate hardware with both existing systems today and new systems going forward, so that it's much easier to work with Windows 95 and hardware as we move forward. We all know we can spend a lot of time installing peripherals in today's computers. Now, besides making it easier, we want to make Windows 95, and we have made Windows 95, faster and more powerful. Windows 95 is a complete operating system. It's not limited by MS-DOS. It's not Windows 95 running on top of MS-DOS, but rather it's Windows 95 with whatever code is necessary to be compatible with MS-DOS existing within it. So it's all one complete operating system. It is a complete 32-bit preemptive multitasking design. So as we move forward to 32-bit applications, they can all run very seamlessly, and all of our applications can multitask, even with our older existing 16-bit applications. And finally, we have the Win32 API set and the OLE, 32-bit OLE. This just enables software developers to write great new applications for Windows 95. The last area we look at under Windows 95 is making it connected. As we move forward in this world, everybody wants to be connected to something, whether it's to be a node out on your corporate network, whether it's to connect onto an online service or the internet, or to do remote access somehow. People want to be connected and have access to information. In this area, we've included all kinds of networking and built-in features for Windows 95 to help you be connected. We have an open networking architecture. We include primary clients, protocols, and drivers directly in the package with Windows 95. And besides the information in clients and protocols we include, it's an open architecture. So you can add other clients and protocols and existing things you have today into Windows 95 very easily and very seamlessly. So it'll help make it very easy to incorporate into your existing network. We've also redone the system management architecture. We all know how difficult it is today to manage all of our computers out on the network. A combination of INI files, config.sys files, and autoexec files make it very difficult to manage all of our computers out on the corporate network. Under Windows 95, we've redone this architecture to make it much easier to manage those systems. And lastly, under being connected, we have all the local and wide area network file and printer sharing capability, email capability, and fax capability, things you're used to be a good citizen out on a connected corporate network. Now, what we'd like to do is take those overall benefits of Windows 95 and boil those down into some key points specific to you and your organization. In this area, we feel that Windows 95 offers 3 key features for you and for your business. To start with, Windows 95 is going to help you reduce your support burden by making the user interface more intuitive, by including integrated networking, by making things like plug and play enabled. We're going to help reduce the phone calls you get, the amount of time you have to do on the basics of installation, and really help you reduce your support burden. Secondly, Windows 95 will help you increase your control over the desktop. By creating a new infrastructure, we can enable new tools, both tools that we'll include within the package, as well as third-party tools that are going to help you manage all of the computers out on your network and make it much easier to put up policies and set things the way you want them. And thirdly, we're going to help you increase the productivity of your customers or your end users by improving overall end user productivity. A combination of multitasking and multi-threading are going to allow your users to be able to do more things at the same time. Remote access is going to help them be connected from the road. And new applications ultimately are going to help make them more productive. So those are some of the key benefits today that we want to go through with you. Now what I'd like to do is just show you a little bit of the layout of what we're running today, so as we go through the demos you can understand what we're doing. Now under the table over here we have 2 servers. We have a NetWare 312 server as well as a Windows NT server. Both of these are running on 16-bit memory 486-66 machines. Now the NetWare 312 server is actually the main server on our network, and we'll see that a little bit later. We then have 4 clients on this desktop. We have 2 machines that Bob and I will use during the day to demonstrate that of an end user and that of an administrator. And during all the demonstrations today, I will play the role of end user and Bob will be our network administrator. For the end user machines, we're using 2 486-33s with 8 megabytes of RAM. We also have a machine that we'd like to upgrade today. We understand that upgrade is a big issue with people, so we'd like to actually upgrade a Windows 3.1 machine today. So this is a 486 4 megabyte machine, and we're using the 4 megabyte footprint to show you that we can indeed run on that. And lastly, we have a machine over here we're going to use for plug and play and to demonstrate a little bit of HP OpenView. Okay? And then the other thing I should note is I am using a portable over here in my docking station for the slides, and we'll actually use this to do some mobile demonstrations later and plug and play demonstrations. Okay. So with that, before we get into the main part of what we want to do, what I'd like to do is kick off a bit of a migration challenge for ourselves and talk a little bit about upgrading. We recognize that upgrading a large number of PCs from Windows 3.1 to Windows 95 is a big issue. So what we'd like to do for you today is actually upgrade a machine, and we'll start that process now and then come back to it in the end. So with that, Bob, can you give us a little hand with this upgrade?
Well, you know, Steve, I was looking at this system, and first of all, you're still running Windows 3.1 here.
I've been on the road a lot lately, and I really haven't had a chance to upgrade, and maybe you can help me out here with that today.
I've heard this excuse before.
Well,
I'll tell you what, let's take a look at what you've got here. First of all, I'll start up the file manager, and Well, okay, you're hooked up to, looks like you're hooked up to our network server. That's good. So you're running Novell's real mode client right now.
Right, and some administrator, probably you, wrote a script so that it automatically logs me on to that Novell server when I log in the morning.
That's right. We use a login script to do that. And let's take a look at your groups. These look standard. And then you're running Microsoft Office.
Don't have much choice there, Bob.
Yeah, every Microsoft employee has to. And what's this, Steve? Ventura Publisher?
You know, I was working on that just a couple of days ago. A friend of mine sent me a clip in Ventura Publisher, and so I wanted to load the application. I haven't gotten it running here. In fact, why don't you go ahead and boot that up, and you'll see the problem I'm having.
Okay, so I've started Ventura Publisher. Steve, this is a DOS app?
Yeah, it's kind of older, so I was just trying to get it running under Windows right now.
Looks like there's a problem.
Yeah, if you go forward, it'll tell you that we're kind of short on memory.
Oh, okay. You know what this is, Steve, is you're short of low memory, conventional memory. And you know what? I think what we'll do is we'll try to do the upgrade, because I believe with Windows 95, our protect mode stuff, it should fix this. You'll have more conventional memory.
Okay, yeah, because I don't really want to go backwards and start over, so it is going to get better, you think, under Windows 95?
Yeah, why don't we give it a shot and see if it works. Now, there's a couple of things you should know, Steve. What I'm going to do is I've set up a login script.
Okay.
And what the login script will do is automatically, the next time we reboot this machine, start the upgrade from the server. So all of the files necessary are up on our, in this case, network server.
Okay.
Plus, we have our login script that I've modified to do this automatically.
Okay. So how do we kick this off?
Well, it's pretty simple. So what I'm going to do now is shut down Windows.
Okay.
And now we're going to reboot the machine.
Okay, so let's go ahead and restart this machine. So this would be basically the next day I walked in.
Right. Right. Normally what would happen is you'd have your user shut their machine down at the end of the day. On the server side, you'd enable all this stuff. And the key thing that we're going to be using here is something called hands-free or automatic install. Yeah. And that's a series of scripts that I actually store up on the server that drives our setup engine automatically.
So that means I won't have to do anything. I can go back to giving slides while this is going on.
That's right. For purposes of our demo, since we're running the beta version of the software, I do have to type in a beta ID. You won't have to do this in the production version of our setup.
Great. Okay, so we could let this run right now and then come back and check on this a little later.
Right. I think the elapsed time for this setup is going to be 30 minutes, but we'll just let it run in the background.
Okay. Well, we'll come back and check up on this now and then to see how this is going. And for right now, we'll go ahead and go back to the slides while Bob's letting that machine run. Okay, so with the migration kicked off, what we'd like to do now is talk a little bit about how Windows 95 will help you reduce your support burden. To start with, we want to talk about end-user training and support. And the main thing we've done here is we've created a simpler, more intuitive user interface. We recognize that there's a lot of work we could do with the user interface, and so we've worked on that to make it easier for end users of all levels. There's a lot of steps in redoing the user interface. To start with, we talk with our product support services. They take millions of calls a year, and actually over 1 million calls a year just on Windows, and questions related to that. And of those questions, 60% or more are of the how-to kind. How do I do this, or how do I do that? So clearly, if we made some changes in the user interface, we wouldn't get so many of the how-to questions. So we start by talking with our own product support services group on things we could do to the UI to make it more intuitive. We then go out and talk with people who train Windows users. We ask people who train users on a day-to-day basis, what changes could we make to the user interface to make it easier for end users and more intuitive? And then finally we do something here called usability testing. Usability testing is an iterative process. We bring people up and have them try a specific operation in the user interface. For example, starting a new program. So we try this with all levels of user, someone who's never used a computer before to someone that's using Windows 3.1 today. We then make a change in the user interface, bring in another group of people, and see how that change affects the process that they worked on. And we iterate this over and over again until we get a user interface that's very easy to use for all processes. Now, besides changes or incorporated in the changes to the user interface, we've redone the installation wizards to make it easier to install peripherals and even applications, and we've redone the help system to make it more clear and more intuitive for people using the help system. So before I go ahead and actually go through and show you the user interface, what I'd like to do is show you a little bit of how usability testing is conducted and actually some people's feedback from Windows 3.1. So what we're going to do now is show you some clips related to Windows 3.1 and Windows 95. And our video is broken into 4 pieces. The first piece shows a Windows 3.0 3.1 focus group. And here you'll see somebody giving their feedback on what they thought of Windows 3.0 and 3.1 today and the user interface. Now after you see that person's feedback, we'll then take a look at some usability testing. What we'll do is we'll show you a brand new user trying to start a program under Windows 3.1 today. And you'll see how difficult this is actually because it's hard from the end user perspective. It's not intuitive what steps they should take. Now after we show you a brand new user trying it under Windows 3.1, we'll then show you how some changes made in Windows 95 make it easier for another new user. So we'll bring in another brand new user and see how some changes to the UI make starting a program easier for them. And then to test how that change affects a Windows 3.1 user, we'll bring in a Windows 3.1 user and have them try that same thing under Windows 95. So with that, let's go ahead and take a look at the video, and feel free to laugh. This is a little bit humorous to start with.
I think programs written in Windows are easy. I like to pull down menus. I don't like Windows.
Why not?
I go back to DOS whenever I have to do anything. Because I don't think it's easy at all. I don't think any of, on the program manager menu line, I don't think any of those things are logical or make any sense. I have never figured out how run works. People try to show me. I can't get my screen in Windows to stay the same. It always changes. I don't get that tile or cascade. Both are useless to me. I just, well, I have 3.0 and 3.1 to upgrade to. But, and then there's a really bizarre way to find out what mode you're running in, and I can never remember it. And I mean, it's not like I have a problem with computers that I can do everything at DOS, and I can create directories and change directories and rem things out and write autoexec bat files, and I can do all that. It's not like I can't do it. It's just, to me, the program manager menu line is totally illogical, and they use words that they made up, and it has nothing to do with the rest of the industry.
But applications running under Windows
Yeah, are fine. I don't have a problem with those. I've gotten, you know, I know where everything is logically in options, edit, file, print, you know. I don't have problems clicking. It's just the program manager I don't get. And people, and I never run more than one program at once because I don't really understand that either. I don't understand how it works. It's just, it would be too scary to me. And I know that I'm kicking and screaming learning Windows. I don't. I'm completely confused here. Word. I don't see right anywhere. That's what bothers me. You know, I think I'm completely lost.
Are you stuck?
I have no idea what I'm doing here. I'm not that stupid.
I don't want you to feel like we're trying to make you feel
You know, I really feel intimidated by this.
Okay.
I don't know what I'm even looking for here.
Locate the WritePad application and open it. WritePad is a word processor that comes free with Windows. Okay, I hit my computer. Maybe I'll try the start button. I'm going to try programs. Oh, right. Anyway, I'm going to hold it there, and then I'm going to come down and hit right pad. And I must have done it right because I've got my little thing here. Okay.
So I need to locate Notepad, so I got to find the program manager somewhere here. And let's try my computer. Okay, I got control panel, printers, folders. No, that's not what I want. So let's close that. Maybe in the start button? What does that do? Start programs, document settings, shut down. Find the notepad and open it. Ah, there we go. Okay. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed that video. Believe it or not, the purpose of operating systems in Windows and computers isn't to intimidate people or make them feel uncomfortable. It's supposed to make their lives easier. So clearly from these videos, I hope you get an idea of there is a lot of improvement that can be made to the user interface. And I'm sure you've had experience of your own that tells you that there are changes that can be made. So with that, why don't we go ahead and take a look at the user interface under Windows 95 today. So what I have here is the system that I brought along for doing this demonstration and all of the end user demonstrations. When I demonstrate the user interface in Windows 95, I like to look at it from two perspectives. That of an inexperienced user or someone who's a novice on the computer, and that of a more experienced user as they work their way up. So let's start out now and look at it from the perspective of an inexperienced user. Now, as you saw before on the video, there's a Start button down here under Windows 95 now. For a lot of new users and a lot of inexperienced users, the main thing they want to do is basically start their programs and their documents. So I'll go ahead and click on the Start button, and you'll notice that a whole bunch of stuff comes up. I see that I can get help here, I can look at my settings, the documents that I ran, and if I want to start a program, I can work my way over, and sure enough, I could go into Microsoft Office and start a program like Word. Now in this case, I've actually customized my Start menu so that Microsoft Word is right there on the Start button. So I can click on Microsoft Word, one click, and I can go ahead and start Word up. Now one of the nice things about Windows 95 then is we removed the hurdle you saw of the user before trying to just figure out where to go to start something, whether it's a document, whether it's getting help or settings. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and expand Word so it takes up the full screen. Now I want to talk about a problem that Windows 3.1 users today have. It's called Windows Management. Now you notice if I start Word up and I have it full screen, under Windows 3.1 today I wouldn't see anything else, so I wouldn't be able to figure out how to do anything else. And believe it or not, Windows 3.1 was designed with multitasking in mind so that people would multitask. Yet less than 20% of the people out there today do multitask or run more than one program at a time. Why? Well, let's look at the screen. If I was under Windows 3.1 today, how would I figure out how to start another program? It's not intuitive to me. Alt-Tab isn't something I was born with or was written on the screen, so I don't know how to switch around. However, you'll notice under Windows 95 that the Start button is still there. It's kind of like an anchor on my UI. Sure enough, if I click on it, I see I can go back to my Programs area, I can bring up accessories, and in fact, I'm just going to go ahead and start up the calculator. So now, as a new inexperienced user, I'm on the verge of multitasking. I'm ready to multitask. I've got two programs running, and I could work with them at the same time. However, I'm going to make another classic mistake of Windows management. I'm accidentally going to click on the Word background before I get to Calculator. So I click on Word, and poof, the calculator's gone. Now under Windows 3.1 today, it is gone. Where did it go? I don't know. I'm most likely going to call one of you at the help area to get help out, because I don't know where it went. Again, Alt-Tab isn't something intuitive. There's nothing on the screen that tells me where it went. Yet under Windows 95, if you look next to the Start button, there's something called a taskbar. And I see that on my taskbar I have Word opened, and there's another button here for Calculator. Sure enough, if I click on Calculator, there it is. So I can click on the Word button, get Word, click on Calculator, get Calculator. It's as easy as changing the channels on my TV. So for an inexperienced user, with two basic changes, a Start button and a taskbar, we've made it easier to start programs and manage multiple things on the window at the same time, or multiple documents or programs simultaneously. So we've gotten rid of two big hurdles for them. Well, let's take this one more level for an inexperienced user. Let's say I want some help. You know, I'm a new user and I like this mouse thing. I figured out how to use it. And I happen to be left-handed though, and so I really don't like the way it's set up right now. So I'm going to go to Help, and I'll go ahead and, sure enough, it's on my Start button, so it's easy to start. And I could look through the contents here. I see there's How To, and if I hit Open on the How To, I can run programs, I can look at that, and there's all these chapters of a book. And one of the nice things under Windows 95 is I could actually print out any chapter I was interested in. But in this case, I know exactly what I want to do. I want to look up mouse, and sure enough, I see buttons reversing. So I type that in, and I go ahead and click Display, and up comes a little Windows Help button. And it says, to reverse your mouse buttons, click here, okay, I'll click there, to display mouse properties. Now, if you remember under Windows 3.1, it would have said, go to Main, go to Control Panels, go to Mouse, and you've been taking down notes and sticking them on your computer. Yet with this little button here called the Jump button, it takes me exactly to the control panel or the sheet I need to make that change for the property. And it says, in the button configuration area, click right-handed or left-handed. And sure enough, if I accidentally drag the properties for mouse on top of my help box, it doesn't go away. So Windows 95, we've redone the help engine, both making it simpler to work with and adding these jump buttons, taking people directly to where they need to go. So again, with another simple concept, just redoing the help engine, we've made it much easier for inexperienced users. Okay, with that, let's kind of move on now to a more experienced user. Let's say I'm a Windows 3.1 user and I've worked on Windows before, and I know how to double click. One of the things I didn't do that entire last demonstration was double click once. Again, believe it or not, double clicking or pounding twice on the left side of an object on your desktop is not intuitive for people. So we've made it so you can do anything you need to with a single click. But now I'm a Windows 3.1 user. I know how to double click. I gravitate towards icons. So there's an icon in the upper left-hand corner called My Computer. I'll go ahead and double click on that. And sure enough, it shows me all the contents of my computer. I see my A drive, my C drive, the networks drives that have been mapped for me, as well as my control panels and printers area. So I'll go ahead and double click on the C drive now, and sure enough, that's a folder view, which I'm very familiar with. And in fact, I can go into my personal documents. I can change the view from large icons to details, back to large icons. So this is all very familiar for me. And one of the things I notice as an experienced user is some of these names don't look right. This is Finance for FY94. I don't recognize that type of long file name. Now rename.xls, that's something I recognize. Well, under Windows 95, we've enabled long file names. So I can type, this is much better. So we're no longer limited to 8.3 names. So for our more experienced and our inexperienced users, they'll no longer have to use an 8.3 names. Now we have done things to make it backwards compatible. If there happens to be a Windows 3.1 user out on the network somewhere and they want to share that file, there is an 8.3 name associated with it, but the end user never sees it. All they work with is long file names, which is very nice. So let me go ahead and close down my personal folders. Now, one of the other things I talked about in changes to the user interface was improved installation windows. Because one of the things we all know our more experienced users do is they try to install things, and that's another area you might get calls sometimes when they don't quite make it all the way through. So with that idea, why don't I go ahead and try to install a printer at this time. I'm going to open up my printers folder, and if I look in here, there is no printer installed, so I'll just go ahead and click on this Add a Printer button and see what comes up. And it's going to bring up a wizard, sure enough, there it is, similar to other wizards that are available for modems, monitors, any type of device we'd like to install. So it says to begin installing your printer, click Next. Go ahead and do that. And I don't have a local printer, but Bob said he had one out on the network, in fact, attached to his machine, so I'll go ahead and click Network Printer. I'll hit Next, and then it says Network Path or Queue Name. Well, I don't understand UNC names or anything else like that, so I'll just hit Browse and see if I can find it. Well, there's the Win95 admin machine, or Bob's machine, and there's a printer called HP1 attached to it, so let's just go ahead and hit OK and hit Next. And sure enough, it recognized that it's an HP LaserJet 3SI, so I'll go ahead and click Next. I don't want to print a test page now, and I'll go ahead and finish. So what it's doing now is it's actually installing the drivers necessary for that printer. One of the nice things under Windows 95 is that if somebody on a Windows 95 machine shares their printer, or it's set up properly on a server, you can actually install that printer without having to track down the drivers. It will install automatically from the other machine. And so that's real handy. So automatically I've installed an HP LaserJet 3SI using the new wizard. And again, could have been a modem, a monitor, any type of device is that easy to install now. Well, let's move ahead a little bit now. As a more experienced user, I like to double click and I know how to get around and I see my folder views and I can install things. but I really want to have fast access to things. I want to be able to do the things I can right away. So one of the things we've done under Windows 95 is we've enabled the right mouse button. If I right mouse click anywhere, I'll get a context-sensitive menu. So for example, if I right mouse click on my desktop, you can see that I could arrange my icons, I could look at the properties for my desktop. And in fact, if I look at that, I can change my background, my screensaver, the appearance, all kinds of things. Now, if I right mouse click down here on the clock, you see that I can adjust the date and time. If I right mouse click on this document or this Word program on the taskbar, I can restore it, I can move it, I can even close it from right there. So you can see with the right mouse button, I can get access to whatever information is available either for a program or a document or even a control from anywhere in the UI. So let's go ahead and click on my computer, and I could open it, but now I want to pull up something called the Explorer. I want to explore my computer. So if I click on the Explorer, I get this view, and Explorer is basically the next generation of File Manager, or File Manager on steroids. It's bigger and better than what we had before. So what we'll do, or what we see under my Explorer, is all of the things that are on my computer. So I see my A drive, I see my hard disk, my C drive, and in fact I can expand that and see all the information. And in fact, if I look at my personal files, over here on the right pane, I can see all of the information in my personal files that I saw before when I was looking in the folder view. And I can change the views just like I did before. Now, besides just looking at the things on my C drive there, I can also see the systems that are attached via the network that Bob's mapped to me already, so I can see all of the things out on sys_NW server, which means out on the Novell server that he's mapped. And in fact, if I want to go ahead and open up the server, I happen to have a folder out there, Win95_US, that's my folder. And if I wanted to copy something, let's say from my personal files, over to my server out there, I can simply drag it from my C drive out onto the server here and drop it on there, and it'll copy it straight over. So I don't have to open up two windows and tile vertically. I can do it all from within this unified namespace. Now, besides the NW_server, I can look at all the computers in my network neighborhood. Now, the network neighborhood is all of the computers in my local work group, and I can look at the entire network, which is everything else. And I think Bob is going to explain that to us a little bit later on when he shows off the network, but you can see that I could easily move and copy things from anything on my computer to any of the computers that I have access to out in the network, okay, as well as the ones that Bob has specifically mapped for this machine. And also I have access to my control panels and other things. Now, one of the other things as we move forward and get more experience is we really want to have access right away. I'm such an impatient person, I don't even want to have to open the Explorer to start a program. Well, one of the things we've done under Windows 95 is enabled shortcuts. In fact, if I right mouse click on this Win32-bit application and drag it onto my desktop, I can then unclick the mouse button, and you see I get a context-sensitive menu. I can move it here, I could copy it here, or I can create a shortcut. Shortcut is just a pointer. It's like a small batch file that says run C:/Windows/Win32-bit WinBez. So now, when I want to open this program, I can double-click on it, or right mouse click and click open, and open it right away. I don't have to go into Explorer, I don't have to go anywhere. I can open that program right away from my desktop. Well, that's pretty handy because, for example, on my desktop I have mail available to me, and the first thing I do in the morning is I open mail straight from my shortcut. That's kind of nice, but one thing else I'd like to do, or something else I'd like to do, is, you know, that folder that I have out on the server, that's where I keep all of my documents. I store them up on the server. So what I'd really like to do is right mouse click that folder that's on the server out onto my desktop and create a shortcut to it. Now I have a shortcut to the folder out on the server. And in fact, if I double click this shortcut, I see the server out there, and in fact the file I just copied over to it. So now I don't have to do any mapping, I don't have to open any kind of network area. I can simply double click on this shortcut and get directly to my folder on the Novell server. That's very handy. Now, one last thing I'd like to do is, you know, I really like the way that start menu is customized. I'm just going to click on this 32-bit application, drag it over to the start button, drop it over there, and then we'll go ahead and take a look at the start menu, and sure enough, it's been added right away. So in summary, for new users, a combination of the start button, the task bar, and the help system are going to make it much easier for inexperienced users. They'll make it more intuitive, and it'll help reduce the calls and training necessary to support them. For more experienced users, they can still do what they're used to doing under Windows 3.1 today, double-click their way around, open their control panels, and get to things they're used to. But more importantly, they can be more efficient. They can right mouse click and get context-sensitive menus. They can create shortcuts. They can customize their start menu. They can make it very easy to get to the information they want to right away. So I hope that gives you a picture and a feeling for the user interface. And with that, why don't we go ahead and go back over to the slides for right now. Actually, before I go and start my slides, you know, Bob, I noticed that the upgrade machine looks like it's pretty much complete, and it's only been about 15 minutes, but where are we right now?
Well, Steve, what it did is the setup utility ran automatically. It detected the hardware and software that was installed on the system. We're actually at the point now where I need to type in a password, and since we're not going to have one, I'll hit enter and let it do its thing.
Okay, so this thing is basically done. I know it does a little bit of last-minute setup stuff, but we'll let this go. So we're basically done with the upgrade at this point, and we will come back to this machine later on, but I wanted to show you it had already gotten to the point where the new user logs on. So with that, now we'll head back into the slides, and let's continue on with our discussion of how Windows 95 will help you reduce your support burden. I hope you see how some of the changes in the UI will help you there, but let's talk about some other things. First off, let's talk about system reliability. Windows 95 has a lot of things that have been changed to make it more reliable. To start with, we're using protect mode components throughout the system, especially in the driver area. One of the main places we run into problems today under Windows 3.1 is with real mode drivers causing a problem in the lower rings of the kernel. So under Windows 95 we have protect mode components, especially in the network area. Our drivers, our protocols, even our clients are all 32-bit protect mode. We also have a modular display driver architecture under Windows 95. What this means is that we write the majority of the code for the display driver, and our people who create hardware, the independent hardware vendors, only have to write a small stub in order to make a display driver. Now under Windows 3.1 we did this for printers, and you realize how much easier it got to be to work with printers. We've now done the same thing for display drivers. Under Windows 95 we've expanded our system resources. And I'll show you this in a second, but we've basically made it easier to run a lot more applications and processes at the same time. Also under Windows 95, we've improved the application's resource tracking so that if there is a problem in the system or under an application, it's a lot easier to clean up after that process or application. Also, as we move forward for our 32-bit applications, we have separate memory address areas. So one Win32-bit application can't step on the code or the space of another 32-bit application. For those 32-bit applications, we also have an asynchronous input queue. That means if one 32-bit application forgets to pick up its messages, the others can continue to run. Under Windows 3.1 today, one application not picking up its messages would stop the whole queue. So that's going to help out. Now, besides the things we've done in terms of improving the reliability, we've also done something for automatic hardware installation called Plug and Play. Plug and Play is an initiative that we work on in conjunction with companies like Compaq and Intel and literally hundreds of other companies in the industry to help make it easier to integrate hardware and peripherals as we go forward. And what this has done for us is it makes it much easier to integrate all types of peripherals with any type of PC going forward, and even backwards with legacy hardware. So we'll show a little bit of that. And in fact, what I think I want to do right now is, instead of talking about this stuff anymore, why don't we go ahead and show you how some of this stuff is applicable. So to start with, let's talk a little bit about system reliability. You'll notice on my machine that I was using before, I still have Word running, so I'll go ahead and keep Word running. Then I'm going to take advantage of the shortcut to 32-bit WinBez and open that. And basically, 32-bit Win32Bez is basically an application that creates Bezier curves and draws them around on the screen. So I'm going to go ahead and open that. So now I've got Word running, and I've got this multi-threaded application running, and I'm going to go ahead and start another application. A friend of mine sent me this test application he wanted me to try out. And I'm sure all of you have friends like mine who send you these untested apps, and well, hopefully you don't have friends like mine who send you apps like this one, which says, bang, you're dead. And sure enough, I'm stuck. Okay? Now with that, I'd like to give this computer the old three-fingered salute, something we're all used to, a little Control-Alt-Delete, and talk about two differences that are going to make this much better under Windows 95. To start with, if you look at when I hit Control-Alt-Delete, I get a list of all of the processes that are running. Okay? Windows 95 runs all applications and all things in separate processes. That means if a particular process has a problem or application has a problem, it's much easier to track the resources. So I can clean up after applications much better now, and in fact, if they have a problem, I can track all of the resources they were using and clean up after them. So that's one change that's better. And in fact, for that, I'll go ahead and test that out. It says the test application is not responding, so I'm going to end task and click End Task, and it's done. Now again, under Windows 3.1, the way that works is it would have given you a blue screen. It would have tried to figure out which application wasn't running and would have given you the opportunity to shut that application down. Now, if it had guessed the wrong application or it didn't clean up all of the resources properly, you would have gone from blue screen to black screen and you would have started over. Yet you'll notice under Windows 95 that it was able to shut that down because it did guess the right one, and it was able to clean up the resources because they're all running processes now. But if it hadn't, I can hit Control-Alt-Delete again, and you'll notice I have the list of processes. So if it didn't guess the right application or I wasn't able to clean up all of the resources properly, I can go back and shut down processes one at a time as opposed to going from blue screen to black screen and having no other option. And in fact, to demonstrate this, I'll go ahead and close multi-thread and shut that process down. So with two things, the ability to run all of our applications and processes now and clean up the resources better, and the ability to back out of a problem by shutting down one process at a time is going to mean that if there is an application that causes a problem, it's going to be much easier for you to recover from. Now with that, let's go ahead and do something else here. I've got a copy of Word open, and I'm going to go ahead and open another copy of Word. And we all know that Word is a pretty slim application, doesn't take a lot of resources, so I'm just going to go ahead and open another copy of Word. And one of the things we've done under Windows 95 is increase the system resources. Now under Windows 3.1 today, we have a 16-bit heap space. And because of that, our heap space fills up rather quickly sometimes when we run out of memory. And so you'll see an error, which I'm sure maybe a few of you have encountered before, called out of system resources. However, under Windows 95, we've created a 32-bit heap space and moved most of the information that was in the 16-bit heap space out into that 32-bit heap space, so we no longer run out of heap space size, and we don't run out of resources because of that. The second thing we've done is we've increased the number of handles available for applications. Handles are what applications use when they want to do something. And under Windows 3.1 today, we only had about 200 handles available. Under Windows 95, we have over 10 times that many handles. So we also don't get out of system resource errors from running out of handles. In fact, you'll notice now I've been continuing to open Word, and I've opened 9 copies of Word. Now I know for a fact on this 8 meg system that under Windows 3.1 today, I would have run out of system resources after opening only 6 copies of Word. However, if I take a quick look at the properties for my computer, not only have I opened 9 copies of Word, but if I look at the performance, I still have 49% of my resources remaining. So I'll go ahead and get out of that. Well, these two demonstrations show you a little bit about how some of the architecture changes we've made are going to make the system more reliable for you. Running applications as separate processes is going to make it easier to clean up after applications and run them more stably in case we have a problem, while increasing the system resources is going to have less out-of-system resources errors for you. Now, these are only a few of the changes we've made, and you can see that they're very helpful working backwards with 16-bit applications, and as well we have a lot of architectural changes for our new 32-bit applications as we go forward. Now see, these are some of the software things we've done and architecture changes we've made to make the system more reliable. What I'd like to do now is ask Bob to help us out and show us how some of the plug and play is going to make working with hardware a lot easier and more reliable. And Bob, what do you have to show us here?
Well, Steve, what I'm going to do now is demonstrate some of the plug-and-play technology that you talked about earlier that we've built into Windows 95. Essentially, what we're going to do is do an upgrade of the system and turn it into a multimedia PC. I'm going to install a Windows Sound System card and a SCSI controller card. Just to show you what we've got configured right now, I'll quickly go to my computer and we'll take a look, and you'll notice that I do not have a CD-ROM installed right now, and there have been no sounds. So what I'm going to do is shut down my PC, and while that's shutting down, Steve, can you turn it off for me? I'm going to come around.
Okay. So you're actually going to install these cards now?
Yeah.
You know, we're kind of limited on time here. This is a television show. We don't really have time. You know, it's usually half a day.
Well, some folks, it takes an entire weekend to do this, but I think I can do this while we're on the air.
Okay.
And here we go.
First biggest challenge in any upgrade to multimedia is just getting the cards installed without cracking the motherboard.
That's right.
Give Bob a chance here to get the cards installed.
And we'll line this one up and insert it. Okay, so far so good, Steve.
So what are you plugging into the cards now?
Well, first I'm plugging in the SCSI controller card. The cable is connected up to our CD-ROM player.
Okay.
And now I'm going to install our cable to our speakers. And if they're going to check the seating, done. I believe we've installed our sound and multimedia capabilities. So we'll reboot the system. Now generally, Steve, plug and play, people don't think of this running on legacy PCs.
Right, this isn't any kind of new fancy computer then itself, is what you're saying?
Right, this is an old ISA bus or ISA bus PC. And by adding in some smart cards, we get full advantage of plug and play, even on the legacy hardware.
Great. So now is this just limited to, I see a CD-ROM and speakers, or does this work for other technologies?
Well, on the ISA bus, PCI, and ESA, any cards will work that are plug and play enabled. Plus PCMCIA cards, you know, those cards that are very popular now,
right.
Plug into notebook computers.
So it could be printers, modems, monitors, anything.
You bet. Anything that's an add-in card for the PC can be handled by plug and play. It's a very flexible architecture, but very powerful in its implementation.
So what's happening now?
So now what's happening is the operating system is detecting that those new devices are there, and we'll know here in a second if we've successfully installed this, because we'll hear the, after login, we'll hear the sound announcing that the machine is starting Windows.
Okay, so it's all installed.
There you go.
I heard a little sound there.
Okay, and what I'm going to do is, to make sure the sound is really working properly, I'm going to run a little AVI clip that I've installed earlier. And if you've used video for Windows before, you'll recognize the skiing clip.
Yes, I think we've all seen this once or twice. It looks like you,
yeah,
right?
that's me, on a good day.
On a real good day. And not in Seattle. That snow's a little bit too soft.
Yeah, that's some powder snow there. And you know, one other thing is, remember I came here earlier and took a look at my computer, and you'll notice now that I actually do have a CD-ROM drive.
Yeah, I see that.
That's right, it's hanging off of our SCSI card. And what I'm going to demonstrate now is a new technology that we built into Windows 95 called autoplay. And autoplay allows us to automatically play the program on the CD-ROM by just simply inserting it into the player. So for people who are kind of intimidated by the technology, this makes it more easy to use, kind of like a game cartridge in one of those old game systems.
Right, you just stick in a cartridge and it runs.
And it just runs. So what I'm going to do is
now you wouldn't use
autoplay.
games, of course. You'd obviously do
Oh no, this
stuff.
is important work stuff that I've got with me. And so what's happening now is the CD-ROM is spinning up, and in a second here we'll start up. There's WinDoom.
Oh yeah, that's important work. I thought you said no games.
Well, this is an early beta version of WinDoom, and we just wanted to demonstrate, since they're one of the ISVs working on Windows 95 implementations, and they've done an autoplay beta as well. This is WinDoom from id Software.
Now, obviously, we don't condone all the violence within this, but clearly you can see Bob's got some important work to do, which is plug and play WinDoom.
That's right.
Okay, well, why don't we leave Bob to work on that, and we'll go ahead and go back over to the slides right now. And we'll catch up with Bob after he's gotten through level 1. Well, with that, I hope you get an idea how the system reliability is going to reduce your support burden, and obviously plug and play is clearly going to make your lives a little bit easier as that goes forward. So let's switch gears a little bit now and talk about some of the integrated networking within Windows 95. Since we assume that most of you, if not all of you, have your computers today on a network and are looking at integrating all of this into a network infrastructure. So within Windows 95, we have built-in support for many standards. To start with, we include both Microsoft and Novell 32-bit Protect Mode client. So for your NetWare clients today, we have a Protect Mode client, or your existing Microsoft network clients, we have a 32-bit Protect Mode client. We include all of the 3 major protocols, NetBEUI, IPS-XPX, and TCP/IP, and we can run natively over any of these protocols. And for adapters, we support both the NDIS and ODI driver model, and we'll use all of your existing drivers going forward. Now, all of these are 32-bit Protect Mode components that we include in Windows 95, but additionally, we have an open architecture, so you can add network clients, you can add 32-bit network clients and protocols as we go forward, or use your existing real mode clients today. So it's very easy to integrate what you're using today or what you may want to use going forward if we haven't included what you want. Now, besides all of the architecture and components for the networking, we've also included some backup-ready agents. We've got built-in backup agents for Cheyenne and Arcata server-based backup. So if you're doing backup today or you want to do backup in the future, it's going to be much easier to integrate with these clients. And I think that, again, the easiest way to talk about this is to show you some. And Bob, as our network admin, maybe you could give us a little demonstration of the networking components under Windows 95.
Sure, Steve. You know, one thing that, that was interesting about what you talked about is all of the technology that we built into Windows 95. And I thought what I'd do, rather than just start with a demo, is to show you kind of the plumbing and how this all actually works.
Great.
So what I'll do is I'll go to my network neighborhood. I'm clicking the right mouse button and pulling up the property sheet on the network neighborhood. In this case, this brings me into the network control panel. And one thing interesting about this, Steve, do you remember back in Windows and Windows for Workgroups, you had to go to like 2 or 3 different places
And
to
it never made much sense. There was the networking, and then there was the other control panel.
Right. So this is all in one place now. So, you know, we've made some progress. The nice thing about it, in one place, you can quickly see everything that's going on in terms of networking on your PC. So let's take a quick look. You'll notice that I have both clients loaded simultaneously, and they're designed to run well together. And since the preferred server on our network is NetWare, let's take a look at that first. So all I did was double-click on the client for NetWare Networks, and you'll notice that I specified my preferred server. So in this case, for Windows 95, this is the server I actually log into in the morning.
Okay.
And that's our NW server, our NetWare 312 server down at the end of the table. One interesting thing is we also have the ability to process login scripts. One difference between our login script processor and Novell's is that ours runs in protect mode. So those TSRs that are loaded from the login script, you have to take those out or make them conditional.
But outside of that, you can now run any of your existing login script like the one we were using earlier.
That's right. That's right. Now let's take a look at our other client. We have a client that's compatible with the Microsoft networks, in this case Windows NT, Windows for Workgroups, another Windows 95 machine, or even a down-level LAN manager server. And what I can also do, Steve, is you'll notice that earlier I was logging into the network server, but I could also log into the NT domain and do both simultaneously. So you could be logged into both network servers as well as NT servers simultaneously.
That's very handy in a heterogeneous environment.
Okay, and you talked briefly about our NDIS drivers. I have an Intel Ether Express card installed in here, so it's a pretty standard card. And we have a 32-bit device driver. So for the best performance, I'm using the 32-bit driver.
Right.
Now, if for some reason I was using an older piece of hardware that might not have a 32-bit device driver available, what I could do is go and use an older 16-bit NDIS card or an old 16-bit ODI driver. Both of those are real mode.
Great. So I do have the option, though, if I do need to use them or want to, I can.
That's right. And finally, let's look at protocols. And here's the great thing. You know how hard it was in old Windows to get one client, let alone one protocol running reliably. What I can do now is run up to 15 protocols simultaneously, and we're designed to do that well.
Wow.
So notice what I've got running today is our IPX SPX. And the cool thing about our IPX SPX is you talked about being direct hosted on top of all of our protocols.
Right.
I could be connecting up to an NT server using IPX SPX. We've decided to choose this as our default protocol. You know, it's good to have a routable protocol as a standard.
Right, NetBEUI's kind of noisy sometimes.
That's right.
Okay, that's good.
Since you're talking about NetBEUI, we do provide NetBEUI for backward compatibility. So if you're on a small LAN or if you're using NetBEUI today on your nets, you can still hook up to any NetBEUI machine.
Yeah, it's still great for small networks.
That's right. And finally, the thing that's probably the most important to our customers is we include standard TCP/IP. Now today, under Windows, getting TCP/IP to work isn't easy. Plus, you have to usually go out and get it from a third party.
Right.
We're providing this standard as part of the operating system in Windows 95. So we also include support for something called DHCP. Do you know what that is, Steve?
Actually, I know this one, Bob. I think it's Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol.
You got it. It's a mouthful. Right. What that really means is that on our NT server, we have the ability to automatically allocate to the clients an IP address across the wire. So every time I start up my machine in the morning, or once a week, or once a month, again, it's settable by the network manager, I can request a new IP address. You don't have to do it by hand. If I need to, I can still come here and type it in by hand.
Great. Well, I knew the acronym, not actually how it worked. I've been studying that part.
Okay. The other thing, if you're using an existing, Unix machine, we can also do name resolution using DNS, okay, the internet standard, Or you can use NT's Windows Internet Naming Services. Okay, so you can do name resolution, i.e. the binding from the IP address to a friendly name through either protocol. Now, the other thing, Steve, is that usually TCP/IP implementations come with a number of standard utilities,
right?
Like ping, ARP, FTP, Telnet. We include all of those.
Good. So I've got some utilities to work
That's
with
right.
besides. It's great.
That's right. And now the last thing, Steve, I also have enabled file and print sharing for networks. Do you remember in Windows for Workgroups we had the ability to share our local hard disk and printer to other systems on the network?
Right, we can do that around here.
Right. But that was limited only to other, if you will, Microsoft network clients. And in that case, I mean Windows for Workgroups or LANman or NT clients.
Right.
Okay. Today what we have is supports for network clients. So I can share my local printer and hard disk, just like before, to any either down-level real-mode Novell network client or another Windows 95 or NT system.
Wow, so even my old MS-DOS-based real-mode network can see this if I want to?
Exactly.
And I assume you control all of that as the admin.
That's right. And we'll actually show that or talk about that in a few moments.
Bob, you know, before we go on, we talked a little bit about the open networking architecture. Can you just show us real quick how we might add a piece of networking, like a client or something?
Well, it's really easy. What we'll do is we'll come back to our network control panel. I'll just push add, and let's select a client to add in this case. Okay, and what we can do from here is select from any number of vendors, the top vendors of networking operating systems. We've already supplied a setup routine that will automatically install their software, and in this case it could be their 32-bit, if it's available, client or their 16-bit client. And what I've done is I selected Novell, and you'll notice that we know how to install both their NetX or the NetWare 3X client, as well as their NetWare 4X or VLM shell.
Great, so I can install a 32-bit Protect Mode client here or an existing Real Mode client if I want to.
Right. There's one caveat, Steve, that you should note is we can only install one Real Mode client and as many 32-bit clients as you have all running simultaneously.
That makes sense. I can understand that.
Okay. So that's all the stuff that we have running from the network control panel. Why don't we now take a look at how this all works as a user? Okay. You've shown them how to browse by double-clicking. So what I'll do is go to the network neighborhood and double-click on it, and it pulls up a new window. And in this case, this is my network neighborhood view. These are everything that's in my work group, Steve.
Okay.
Okay. Now, what's interesting about this is if you take a look at these, can you tell me which ones are NT servers, which one are NetWare?
No, you know, the icon looks the same for all of them, so I assume they're all Windows 95 machines probably.
Well, actually they're not, and the names kind of give you a little hint about what they are. But why don't I do this? Why don't I point to this and do a right mouse click and pull up a property just like you've done before.
Okay.
And you'll notice that indeed this is an NT server.
Okay, so we've got an NT server out there.
Okay. And this icon next to it, I'll do a right mouse click on it, and that's a NetWare 312 server, and you notice it's actually a 10 user license, and we have 7 connections out of 10 in use. So that's pretty useful.
Yeah, it's kind of handy information.
Right, for network managers, that makes our job easier. Now, the other thing is you notice when I do the initial right mouse click, I can run a number of commands against that network server that typically I'd have to go to the command line to run. For example, if I'm working late and I forget who I am, I can run who am I. And see,
You're
you can see that.
Working too late.
That's right. You can tell that I'm logged in as Windows 95 admin. Okay,
right.
So the admin is logged into this machine. But there are other things that I could look at too. I could log in or log out, attach, or even map a drive if the case would be. So let's take a look at how this would work. For example, again, all I'm doing is browsing by double-clicking. You notice I didn't have to log into the server.
Yeah, I noticed that. So you just ran some client-side utilities. So now you're just kind of looking at the server?
Yeah, I'm just browsing the server.
Okay.
And what I can also do is, as a system manager, I can also run the server-side utilities.
Okay.
So why don't I do that? I'll go to the public directory. And since I'm running primarily on NetWare today, what I'm going to do is run the, if you will, the kind of canonical NetWare system manager's utility, and it's syscon. I'll say it together, syscon. And syscon is actually a command line or DOS utility, and this is running on our 32-bit client, and you'll notice it's running fine. I'll come here to user information, and boom, there's all of the users in our bindery.
Great.
So Windows 16-bit Windows apps, 32-bit Windows apps, and 16-bit MS-DOS applications run just fine on our Protect Mode client.
Yeah, it looks like you've got all the Novell client and server-side utilities. So while we have this up here, We were talking a little bit before about user level security and me sharing my devices. How does this all get impacted by what you're doing?
Oh, what's really interesting is, unlike a lot of other pure networking operating systems, we don't implement a new security model. Rather, we take advantage of the one that's already running on your network. In this case, if you're running NetWare, we communicate directly to the bindery. If you're running on Windows NT, we communicate directly to the domain controller.
Okay, is there some way we can demonstrate that today?
Yeah, in fact, why don't we do this, Steve? Why don't we pull up and take a look at the sharing on your PC?
Okay, so let's say I want to share my C drive. I'll go ahead and pull that up. And I'll go ahead and look at the list of people I can share with. So this must be user level security.
Right. And you'll notice, Steve, that when this list comes up, it's going to look remarkably similar to the list that's in Syscon.
Yeah, it looks exactly the same except for a few Windows 95 things.
Right.
So the list that you're managing on the bindery is what's controlling who I can share with.
Exactly. I manage the user namespace in one point of management server side using the server utilities that you already know how to run today.
Hey, well, that's great. While we're in here, I've got a new employee starting Monday named Fred. Why don't we add him to the bindery and maybe I can give him some stuff?
That's not a problem at all. In fact, what I'll do is I'll just add Fred. And yes, we'll create his directory. Boom, I'm done. Okay, so I've just added Fred to the bindery.
Well, let's see what happens to my sharing list then. I'll go ahead and do this again and I'll look at adding somebody. Hey, and sure enough, there's Fred.
Right.
So real time, the bindery that you're administrating from within Windows 95 is what I'm using for my security.
Exactly. We call this pass-through user-level security. What we do is we pass through our requests to the server and take advantage of the namespace on the server.
That's pretty handy, Bob. Looks like we've got a lot of networking stuff included here.
Yeah, it makes it a lot easier to manage the PCs.
Well, I hope you get an idea now how the integrated networking Windows 95 will help you reduce your support burden, both from your perspective of being able to integrate Windows 95 on your existing network or new networks going forward, as well as from your end user's perspective of being able to attach to and work on different servers, all from the same user interface. So with that, it's getting a little warm underneath these lights. Why don't we take a short break?
Thanks, Stephen. During the break, you may want to jot down dates and information on upcoming Traincast programs from the program guide we'll have running. See you in a few minutes. Welcome back to the Windows 95 Traincast. Today we're focused on Windows 95 for the IS and network professional. We've seen how Windows 95 can help you reduce your end-user support burden. Now let's get back to Stephen Guggenheimer and Bob Taniguchi for more demonstrations on how Windows 95 can give you additional control over your desktops.
Okay, thank you and welcome back. What I'd like to do is move forward now, and what I have now is a slide showing a little bit of the systems management architecture for Windows 95. Under Windows 95, we've redone the architecture to make it much easier to manage computers out on the network. What we have in Windows 95 is something called a registry. Registry is a dynamic database of information that stores all the information about your applications, the shell that you're using, the operating system, as well as the hardware and software that's installed. Now the registry is nice because it stores all this information in the same format. So we no longer have a proliferation of INI files and config sys and autoexec bat, but we have one area to store all this information. And it also stores information about users and user-specific information. So now we have this great dynamic database of information about the hardware, the software, and the user information, and we can access this information using a variety of different tools. We can use RPC-based tools, of which we include a few in Windows 95. We can use SNMP-based tools, and again, we include an SNMP agent within Windows 95, making it easy to access. Going forward, you'll be able to use DMI-based tools, as well as other tools. So we have this great registry of information that's got all of the information, and we have a lot of different ways to access it. And so this gives us the ability to much more easily manage computers out on our network. So with that, why don't we actually show off a little bit of the registry information and how it'll affect our ability to manage users out on the network. So Bob, maybe you can help us out here.
Sure, Steve. You know, one of the components of the registry that actually shows up in the slide is something called user profiles. And I thought what I'd do is quickly demonstrate that. So to do this, why don't you go ahead and log into my system here, Steve.
Okay. So could this be anywhere on campus?
Right. in this scenario, let's pretend for a moment that what's happened is you've gone to my office and you're just using my PC temporarily.
Okay.
And why don't you log in like you normally do?
Okay. Yeah, you know, if I go out on campus, I like to get my background. It's clearly much better looking than yours, so it'd be nicer to see that.
Well, what happens, user profiles store a number of, if you will, user-specific information. And we have the ability to store the registry and the user profiles up on the network. And that's what we're doing in our demonstration today. So if everything works right, what will happen is your user preferences that you've set on your machine will follow you to my machine. And
okay, so as long as this is a machine up on the network, it'll be able to pull that information off the server?
That's right. But user profiles also will work locally, so if the machine's not on the net, you can have the user profiles work locally as well.
Well, that looks like my background, and looks like even the shortcuts that I created earlier during the UI demo. Will they work?
Let's take a look.
Well, here's the shortcut to the folder up on the server, and since this machine's supposedly up there, sure enough, there's the folder and even the file I copied over there earlier.
That's right. The background, the shortcuts, even the network connections are all duplicated and as part of your user profiles.
And look at this, you know, my start menu, remember how I had my customized start menu with Word and that application I added earlier?
Right.
That's there too. Well, that's pretty handy, Bob. It looks like then I can go anywhere out on the network and get all the information I'm used to.
That's right. Our customers who want to have or enable a user to rove on their corporate network and to have their desktop follow them around the network can do it very easily with Windows 95.
That looks very useful. You know what I'll do is I'll go ahead and log off now and let you go back to work here. And, you know, while you're logging onto your machine, I'll let that go ahead. I was going to play a little bit with mine. You know, I discovered some interesting things earlier, and let me show you a little bit about that.
Interesting, Steve?
It's a term I use for things I like to play with. So when you log onto your machine, I'll go ahead and play over here. One of the things I found was this property page. And under properties, one of the things you'll notice is screensaver. You know, I'd like to set up a screensaver. I did that once before. Remember that?
Yeah, that took us about an hour to get that straightened out again, Steve.
Well, I forgot my password.
Well, I realize that.
But I'm much better now. And, you know, on top of that, there's this other thing that, you know, I was talking to a friend of mine, and they said that if I went out here and got to a command prompt, because you can do that in Windows 95, that I could adjust some settings to make this machine faster. For example, they said something about formatting a drive.
You don't want to do that,
and something
Steve.
like del tree. They said if I remove some of the stuff, it'll get much faster.
Well, clearly this is not. This is something that you would want to control in your users. Every company has one user. It's Fred in accounting. But you always have this user who's fiddling around with their PC and very often damages their PC to the point that it's not operating properly.
I'm not damaging, I'm learning.
That's right. It only took an hour last time to get your PC back on the net.
Okay.
So what we've done is we've created something new called system policies. And again, this works based on the registry, Steve. So what I'll do, I've logged back into my PC as myself, and you'll notice the background's mine. In fact, all of the tools and et cetera have all changed to my tools. And what I'm going to do is select a policy editor. Okay? System policies allow me to do just that, to affect system policies. And what I'm going to do now is open one that I've already set up. And you'll notice that this is sitting up on our network server. It's just a file. This could be on an NT server or any other server that I have file access to. Now you'll notice that I have the ability to set up profiles for users, and in this case I've got two set up, one for myself and one for you. I can set up policies for computers, and I have one for my PC as well as yours. Okay? Or I can set up defaults. That is, if somebody logs onto the network with a valid password and user login, but I don't have a policy set up for them, I can set up defaults so that anyone logging on the net gets that default policy.
So at least they get the default if there's nothing specific.
So let's take a look at your policy. And you know, I'm not real happy with you messing around with the display control panel. I remember that took an hour of my time last time. And I think what I'll do is I'm going to hide the background page, screensaver, and appearance pages from Steve. And you know, I'm also not real happy with Steve being able to run the command window. So I'm going to remove the command capabilities. And oh yeah, there's one last thing. You know that wallpaper Steve has, he really likes it, and I think it's really awful. So
wait a second, I'm not sure I'm liking this at the moment.
What I'm going to do is select a new wallpaper for Steve and save these policies out to our server. So Steve, what I'd like you to do is to log out and pretend that you're coming in and logging in again first thing in the morning.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and log out again.
And let's see what happens.
Okay. Now, this is all on the server again?
Right. Policies are just a simple file stored up on the server. What happens is when you log in first thing in the morning, connect up to the network, these policies are downloaded from the network onto your PC. So any changes that I've made in policies should be reflected automatically right now.
Well, hopefully this isn't as hard on me as I think it might be. So you actually keep one policy file for this entire setup?
Right, and it's possible for users who have multiple user types, multiple locations, to have separate policy files or even multiple policy files on one server. Again, it might be on a department basis.
Okay, well this is logging on here. I'm not so sure, Bob. I saw some of those changes you made look a little scary to me.
That's
Ooh.
right. Well, there's that new wallpaper that I selected, Steve. Looks like the company parking lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, during a very busy day. I'm not sure I like that. I think I'll go ahead and refix that the way I like it. Go to the property sheet because I know how to get to the appearance page. That's what I was showing before.
It's gone.
Wait a second, my appearance tab is gone. It's not very good. Well, maybe I'll go to the run command line and pull up a command prompt and wow, the run line's gone from my start menu.
That's right.
I'm feeling a little hamstrung here, Bob.
Well, that's the beauty of system policies. It gives the control back to the network manager or PC manager.
Yeah, you look like you got a lot of control with that one.
That's right.
Okay. Well, I hope that you get a little feeling for how the registry gives you the ability to manage your computers and basically your users better. The tools we've included allow you to set up things like profiles and system policies. And the nice thing about the registry, as I was talked about earlier, is you can reach it through other tools. And in fact, Bob, I was working with one of the HP reps recently, and he was showing me that HP OpenView, the one they have today, can work on top of Windows 95 and actually takes advantage of the registry.
Well, I think that was installed in my plug-and-play system. Can you show me how that stuff works?
Sure, let me give you a little quick demonstration real quick. What I have on this system is a copy of HP's OpenView for Windows. And even though it was written for Windows 3.1 and Windows for Workgroups, it'll run on top of Windows 95 and take advantage of the registry.
What does HP OpenView do, Steve?
HP OpenView allows me to manage the network, basically see what's going on at all times to see if there's problems with computers going down, if nodes are up or down.
Oh, okay.
The tools we showed earlier were kind of how to set up the network and manage it. This is to keep an eye on it in case something goes wrong.
So this is a management tool, a network management tool.
Yeah, it's a network management tool. And in fact, what you see is a layout of our network here. There's actually a printer and some computers.
What do these green and blue icons mean?
Well, the blue icon allows me to go to other networks, and these green icons all represent our computers here. And the fact that they're green means that they're all running well.
Okay, so these are all our systems here in our printer there.
Exactly. And in fact, one of the nice things about HP OpenView is if we have a problem, it tells me that there's a problem on the net.
How does that work?
Well, why don't we simulate that? Why don't you unplug one of the network cables and see what kind of alarm it causes for us here on our OpenView console. What the HP OpenView does is it goes out and polls every 10 seconds or so, and when something goes wrong, I hear a little beep, and sure enough, we notice that one of our computers has gone red, and in fact, a little alarm bell has gone off up top. If I open up the alarm bell, it tells me that we have a critical node down on one of our Intel boards.
Pretty neat.
Let's check and make sure we can get this back running again since we'll need that computer later. Why don't you go ahead and plug that back in. And we'll see that when it comes back on again that this thing will go green for us and it'll show us that the network is up and running again.
Well, Steve, that's pretty neat, but do you have to be sitting behind the console to pick up these alarms?
Well, one of the nice things is I can customize the alarms, and in fact I can enable forwarding. So I can forward it to any server out on the network. So no matter where you are, we can find you.
So if I'm working on your machine in your office, I could actually pick up the alerts there?
Sure, if it's forwarded there.
Okay. Well, what about if I'm not at the office?
Well, Bob, one of the nice things about being administrators, we can follow you anywhere. In fact, HP OpenView will allow me to send a binary file or in fact dial a telephone number and page you at home.
So it could send email or page me? I'm not sure my wife would like that so
much,
Bob,
Steve. I think we have a little help here for you as an admin. We can page you right at home.
That's pretty neat. So we can monitor this directly, we can follow us around on the net, and we can do it remotely?
Yeah, that's one of the nice things. Even though we page you at home, we'll allow you to actually be able to dial in and remotely manage this network too. One of the last things I want to show you real quick is under options or under controls, we have an SNMP manager. Now Windows 95 has an SNMP agent built into it.
Right.
So an SNMP console like this, you can do standard queries, select queries, manage your SNMP database.
So what you're saying is that even though this is already written for Windows, this will run on top of the SNMP agent we've built into Windows 95.
Right, you don't have to go out and install an SNMP agent and all these, and it gets all its information from the registry. And in fact, going forward, I'm sure companies will take advantage of the extensive and new information in the registry to create more powerful and new tools.
Well, that's neat. Now, there was some other stuff that we've been doing with Hewlett-Packard. Can we demo that as well?
Sure. Now, the one thing about HP OpenView is that's a product that you buy outside of Windows 95.
Right.
It's something you would buy in addition. One of the things we've done with HP Hewlett-Packard, though, is we've worked on some of their printer technologies and actually included those in Windows 95.
So this says JetAdmin. What is JetAdmin?
Right. Well, there's another utility in Windows 95 called JetAdmin, and it takes advantage of something we've built into Windows 95 where we work with them. What it does, or actually does for you, is it'll allow you to manage all of your printers out there in the network. And in fact, I see a listing of them.
So this is a list of what it looks like of our network printers. And there's the one that we have on our little demo net here.
Right, it's the HP LaserJet 4P, and in fact, if I double click on it, I can see exactly what's wrong, or right, depending on what's going on in this printer. And in fact, you see that we've got a little red light here, and it shows us that the cable isn't connected very well.
Well, you set that up, so.
Well, you know, we were in a hurry to get this going.
Let me take a look.
Why don't you take a look at that?
Oh, sure enough. Okay, how's it doing now, Steve?
Ah, you've got a green on line again. Okay,
that was simple.
So that was pretty easy to fix. So for you as an admin, you can really take advantage of a tool like this. Now, one of the other things about it is you'll notice if I actually close this down, just for fun, why don't you go ahead and unplug that again?
Okay.
And we know what the error is, but you'll notice this little green printer icon in the bottom right-hand corner. The JetAdmin utility actually has a client-side utility. So besides that utility that Bob has, you can see here that from the client side, I can tell if my printer's down. And in fact,
so this is the user piece.
right, this is the user side.
I see.
So as an end user, instead of having to call you every time and have you open up that, I can just click on my little printer icon and see if I'm out of paper, low on toner, or other things.
Oh, that's great. That's traditionally the calls that I get.
Right, so why don't you go ahead and plug that back in again, and we'll see that even from the user side it changes.
Okay.
So we have a simple utility for end users built into the product that allows them to see what's going on with their printer, as well as a much more detailed tool for administrators to take advantage of.
Now I noticed that little icon down in the toolbar changed colors.
Yeah, it went from red to green just to make it real easy for the end user to know when you fixed it for them, Bob.
Cool. Okay.
Okay. Well, I hope that shows you a little bit of how not only are tools we're including going to help you out, but having the registry and being able to create new tools is going to give you more capabilities for managing your network. Now, we've shown you a couple of tools and talked a little bit about the registry and how that's going to help you increase your control. There's a few other things we should talk about. First off, some people like to have basically remote system setup or run off of what they call Ripple. Okay, and so basically the entire operating system and all the software is run from the server, and actually the computer boots just off of the net card. Well, we will support that under Windows 95, so you don't have to change that model if you're using it today. Now, besides the tools of the System Policy Editor, which we showed you a little bit earlier, we also have some tools for administering the network, kind of like HP OpenView, but not nearly as advanced a tool or does as much. But we have something called the System Monitor and the Net Watcher, and we'll go ahead and pull those up in a second. And one other thing is I want to talk a little bit about security one more time, since Bob helped us out and talked a little bit about user-level security, and the fact that under Windows 95, we enable user-level security where you as an administrator can take advantage of your existing bindery or your domain list to set up sharing on individual Windows 95 machines. So if they want to share their information, they can only share it with people that are validated on the network. Well, besides that model, for those of you who are used to Windows for Workgroups, where you use a share level security model, that is, you can either turn on or turn off sharing, and in the case where you don't have a server, you don't need a server, you still have that capability under Windows 95. So you can set it up as purely a peer-based network with no server and use existing share level security, or take advantage of the new pass-through level security. Well, with that, Bob, why don't you maybe help us out here and show off a little bit of this remote administration?
Okay. I think before I get started here, I remember, Steve, when we were setting this up, you were saying that your machine was running a little slowly.
Yeah, you know, there was a period of time where it was running slow, and then, you know, it seems to be running okay right now, but I don't know, it's kind of intermittent.
Okay. So when it was running slow,
I was just working on it, you know, just opening up my computer or trying to get a file. It just seemed to be running slow for a while there. I really don't understand why, and maybe you can help me out.
Well, you know, Steve, what I'll do is I'm going to use some of the built-in tools that you talked about, the System Monitor, etc. And what I'll do, since I'm the administrator on this network, I can go to the network neighborhood, select Properties, and then select some administration tools that allow me to manage your PC across our network. Even though we're right next door to each other, I'm going to reach out across the net and manage your machine.
Oh, so you could be in your office while I was in a separate building and do this.
Exactly. So the first thing I'm going to look at is System Monitor, just to troubleshoot what's going on your system. System Monitor is what it says, a performance monitoring utility that allows me to monitor various components of the system, either locally or remotely. And what I set up, Steve, why don't you just do some stuff on your machine briefly so I can monitor it. I'm monitoring now the memory manager, our IPX, SPX protocol stack, bytes transferred through the Microsoft Network client, and then just an aggregate CPU processor utilization.
Okay.
And you know, Steve, things look okay here. How does the system feel right now?
It feels pretty normal right now, actually. It's very responsive, and it's not like it was when it was being slowed down. So it seems okay. I mean, I've opened my network neighborhood, I've opened some of my servers. You know, everything seems to be okay at this moment.
Okay. Well, the net looks okay. There's no little net storm going on here, and your memory management looks okay. So I can't really tell anything from the system monitor. So what I'm going to do now is, I guess, try NetWatcher, Steve. And what NetWatcher allows me to do is to administrate the pure services on your machine. Remember, you shared your C drive earlier in the demo.
Right.
So what I can do now is take a look and, oh, this is interesting, Steve. Do you know that I'm connected to your machine plus the HP demo machine? Do you think maybe that could be interacting somehow?
Yeah, you know, it was slowed down when we were setting up the HP machine, but I don't remember sharing it. I must have done it when I wasn't.
So it's possible that some files were being transferred between your system and
yeah,
the
it could
HP
be.
demo machine.
Could be.
Okay. So you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect the HP demo machine from your machine, and all I do, again, use the mouse and then disconnect that user, and it's just me now. And you know what I think we're going to do, Steve? I think I'm going to turn off this share. As I recall, this directory, didn't it have some important files you were working on?
Yeah, I don't actually remember sharing that one at all. I'm not sure why anybody would use it anyway.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is remotely turn off sharing of that directory that Steve's called storage on his machine, and done. And I could actually make this permanent by using system policies sometime else downstream.
Oh, it's pretty handy, Bob. It looks like you can take a look at what's going on in my system and even manage my network connections even from within your desktop.
That's right. The beauty of this, Steve, is before I leave my office, I've diagnosed some of the problems on your machine.
Great. Well, thanks for showing that to us. I think that's pretty useful.
You bet.
Okay. Well, I hope you get some sense now by how having the registry and all these different tools, both tools we include for setting up the network, like the system policy editor, and managing the network, some of the stuff Bob just showed us, as well as outside tools like HP OpenView, are going to help you increase your control over the network. So with that, why don't we move on a little bit now and talk about how Windows 95 will help increase the productivity of your end users. So to start with, Windows 95 is going to help just speed up their everyday use. By having a new printing subsystem, graphics subsystems, 32-bit disk access and file access, 32-bit network access, it's going to make the whole operating system faster for them. So things they do on a day-to-day basis will happen more quickly, and the system will be more responsive for them. Now, besides just being faster on everyday tasks, Windows 95 is going to enable them to perform multiple tasks at the same time. A combination of preemptive multitasking and multi-threading is going to allow end users to be more productive when working under Windows 95. Now, just as important as doing things on my desktop on a day-to-day basis, I really need easy access to information and communications capability. As we talked about earlier, being connected is important. And a couple of the nice features within Windows 95 are the remote access capabilities as well as built-in messaging. Remote access capabilities allow me to access resources from outside of my normal network environment. So I can dial into my network, I can dial into the internet, to online services, all from within my Windows 95 desktop on a mobile machine. Also, built-in messaging allows me to receive my email, my faxes, my online messages, all in the same inbox. And at some point in the future, even my voicemail. So I'll have a universal inbox for all of the information and messages I receive, making messaging much easier. And since that's one of the tasks a lot of us do often, it's really going to make it easier and make us more productive. And finally, there'll be a lot of applications written specifically for Windows 95, taking advantage of the new API set that will make end users more productive. And we really don't even have a lot of ways to gauge that yet because there's so many new things coming along. So with that, why don't we go ahead and take a look at some of this stuff. Let me head back over to my demo machine here. First thing I want to do is pull up 32-bit application called Picture Publisher that takes advantage of multi-threading. Now, one of the nice things about the Win32 API set is that it's common to both Windows 95 and Windows NT. So when developers create applications using this API set, they'll run on top of either platform. And in fact, if I look at the help about Picture Publisher, we can see that this was actually created for Windows NT, but with no modifications runs on top of Windows 95. So what I'd like to do real quick is go ahead and open up a few files. And Picture Publisher is basically just that. It's a picture manipulation type of program. So we'll go ahead and get this set up and pull up a few images. And we'll grab those two and we'll go ahead and open those. Now what I'd like to do is show off a little bit of how Picture Publisher in Windows 95 enables multi-threading. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide this picture over a little bit, and I'm going to take this image of the Statue of Liberty and rotate it by some arbitrary angle, let's say 6 degrees. And then very quickly I'm going to grab this other image and I'm going to also rotate it by the same arbitrary angle. Now if you watch the box over on the right, you notice both processes are going on at the same time. So instead of rotating one image and then another image, as would be the case today, it rotates both images in parallel. Okay, now many of you may not use this type of graphic application in your day-to-day environment, but you could think of threading in a mail application where you could be downloading mail while reading it simultaneously. Or as a developer, you could be editing a piece of code while you were compiling another one. Or working on a large database, you could be adding new data while at the same time running a macro in the background. So you can see that threading is going to help end users be more productive within a given application. So with that, why don't we go ahead and close this out. And I won't save those changes so I can do this again. And now let's try a little bit of multitasking. First thing I'll do is I'll go ahead and pull up this WinBez application, as obviously it's one of my favorite for demoing. It's nice and graphical. So I'll kind of stick that over here, I guess. And then, let's assume right now I need to do a large file copy. I'm running one application, but while this is going on, I'd like to go ahead and start a large copy. So I'll go ahead and open my C drive, and sure enough, there's a file called copy me, and it makes sense to copy me to here. So we'll go ahead and drag that over there and start that copy. So now we'll just say yes to all. We'll just write over what we're doing. We're now doing this large file copy while running another program. And really to push the system, I think I'm going to go ahead and format a floppy. Now you could assume at this point in time that I had some information I wanted to take home with me. And so I'd go ahead and get a floppy disk started. And now we can see coming up in this corner, I'll go ahead and start this thing formatting. And it's not going to format for me, so I'm actually going to just let that go ahead and go. And what I'd like to do right now is, since I can't get it forming, why don't we push the system in another way? In fact, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and change the resolution of this machine on the fly. So right now, while I'm doing a large file copy and I'm running another standard application, I'm going to go ahead and push the system a little bit and actually try to change the resolution on the fly. So I'll go ahead and hit apply, and it'll say it wants to resize it, so I'll say OK. So I'm going to let this thing take off, and sure enough, with the copy still going, we'll pull that up front, and the multi-threaded still going, we've actually changed the resolution. Now I'm going to let this pop back because there's some other demos later on that need the regular resolution. But the nice thing is I was able to do many things at the same time. So you can see now how for end users, they can be more productive within an application through multi-threaded and be able to do more things at one time through multitasking. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and close this down. And let's go ahead and move over to my remote machine. Okay, now one of the things you'll notice on the machine over here is that I've been doing my PowerPoints this whole time on a portable machine that's actually in a docking station. So you could assume I was in the middle of this presentation out on the road somewhere, and I actually needed another slide. I forgot a slide. Or let's say I was on a technical visit somewhere and I forgot a driver. So let's show off a few things. First, let's show off something called hot docking. One of the nice things about a true plug-and-play system, which in this case, not only is it got plug-and-play peripherals, but it actually has a plug-and-play BIOS in it, is that I can hot dock or undock the system, which means right now I'm going to eject this system, and it changes the resolution of the monitor to prepare for that. And I'm going to go ahead and eject this, and it will keep running. I won't have to restart it, set up another configuration. It's already ready to go. Okay, so I've undocked it, and I've actually attached another video adapter so you can see this screen now. And one of the nice things you'll notice is that when I undocked, it recognizes where I am, that I'm no longer in the dock configuration, and now my ballpoint mouse moves, and you'll notice that PowerPoint is still open. It didn't shut down or anything. It just went right through the undocking without turning the machine off or anything. Now, as I was starting before, let's say we're on the road and we need another slide, or we need some kind of device drive or something. Well, the first thing I want to do is plug in a modem, and another plug-and-play technology called PCMCIA, this is basically a PCMCIA card, allows me to plug in this fax modem directly into this slot right here, and we'll go ahead and plug that in, and we'll hear a little beep. I'm not sure if you'll hear it, but this now, I have a modem on board and I'm ready to work. So you'll notice on my desktop, I have a shortcut to Carol on Pyrex server. Now what this is we showed you shortcuts before when I was doing the UI demo that showed how I create a shortcut to a server path that I use often. Well, I've got that shortcut here now, but I'm not connected to the network, so let's see what happens. Well, if I double click on that shortcut, it recognizes that I'm not in the docking station and attached to my server through the normal network, so it gives me the opportunity to connect via remote access. Windows 95 includes remote access, which allows me to dial in to a dial-up server. So I'm going to enter my password and go ahead and hit the connection and hit OK. So immediately recognize that when I was in an undocked state that it should take advantage of remote access. One of the nice things about remote access in Windows 95 is that it now works over point-to-point protocol. So now I can run TCP/IP, IPX, or NetBEUI over my remote access connection. This means not only can I dial into an NT server as before, but now I can dial into a Shiva box, into a Netware Connect connection, or other types of server-side remote access servers. So Windows 95 allows me to do this. And as you see, I've already dialed in, and it's actually now verifying my username and password. Windows 95 takes advantage of whatever authentication you use, or it's extensible if you want to add your own remote authentication. So now it's connected me to the network, and remember that I double-clicked on a folder out on the server. So now it's actually brought up that folder. So, I mean, if you think about it, what I've done now is I've been on the road, I've plugged in a portable plug-and-play modem, I've tried to attach to my server that I normally use, and since it didn't recognize it, it took advantage of remote access to dial into my main computer back at work and open up that folder for me. And in fact, sure enough, there's the slide I want called Copy Me, and I'll just drag that onto my desktop, and we'll go ahead and copy over that slide so we can use that in our presentation as we go forward. So now you can imagine I could be anywhere on the road right now. I could be overseas even. I've actually done this demo from England where I've dialed in and pulled off this same slide. So for us, it's very handy. If I've forgotten a file, a report, or even a driver, I can dial in and get it. So I see I've already made that copy. There it is on my desktop. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect right now. I'm going to disconnect from our server. And so now we're disconnected. Well, now I want to view this slide, but let's go ahead and put it back in the docking station so we can view it on our higher resolution monitor. So I'm going to go ahead and unplug our modem. I'm going to go ahead and put the top down. Not going to shut anything off. PowerPoint's still running. Going to disconnect our jack so we can use it again as we go forward. And I'm going to plug the system right back into the docking station. Okay. So we'll go ahead and get that guy back in there. Okay. We'll give it a second. Let this thing come back up for us. And you'll notice immediately that it pops back up. And we see that our PowerPoint's still running. And now it'll start to recognize some of the peripherals it's got attached. So now I can use this external mouse. And you see it recognized we were on this other monitor now. So instead of running in 640 by 480, it's gone all the way up to 1078 resolution. It's going to recognize our net card. It's going to see the CD-ROM. So there's really this advanced plug-and-play with the new BIOS and hot docking and undocking. Makes it very nice for me as an end user to work with this mobile system. Now we notice we have PowerPoint still running, and we brought that file called Copy Me over. We copied it down off the net. So let's go ahead. Oh, and it actually recognizes that I'm on the net now and wants me to log on. I'm going to cancel that for now because I don't need to get onto the network. But what I'll do is I'll drag, it's still thinking. Oh, it's recognized the hard disk that's attached here. So it's picking up one at a time all of the things that are inside of this docking station that I didn't have when I was undocked. I'm just actually going to double click on Copy Me, and it'll bring up PowerPoint the same way. So now while I was on the road, I was able to dial in to the corporate network, grab the slide I needed to finish the presentation, and bring it up. And it says, hey, it's almost Miller time, let's get going. So I guess that's a clue for us that we better keep moving along here. So I hope you get a feeling now for a combination of multitasking and multi-threading, as well as all of the stuff we've just shown you with remote access is going to make your end users much more productive. And remote access, especially as we go forward, is going to help people be connected all the time. Okay. So with that, we've talked a little bit about reducing your support burden, increasing your control over the desktop, and making your end users more productive. So now let's talk a little bit about the migration, because we recognize that migration is a big issue and there may be a lot of benefits, which we hope you've seen here. So let's talk a little bit about how the migration will work. To start with, let's talk about a few of the tools and things that are within Windows 95 that are going to help make the migration smoother for you. To start with, there's customizable setup, automated batch installation files, and that's exactly what Bob used earlier to upgrade that machine. So you can control and do hands-free upgrades of all of your machines, whether you choose to do it through scripts using Novell server logon scripts or other logon scripts, or taking advantage of new technologies going forward, such as Microsoft Systems Management Server, to go ahead and do a push install. Now, on top of just the installation, we're working very hard to ensure Windows 95 works with what you have. Your MS-DOS and Windows-based applications and drivers, as well as your existing real-mode networks today, and performing well on standard hardware such as a 386DX with 4 meg of RAM. Now, to help you in the transition for new users, we've got some tools included in Windows 95 to help ease the user interface transition. To start with, we have some built-in training tools. Here we've created a computer-based tutorial, a CBT, for new users, so that when people for the first time come across the Windows 95 user interface, there's a training tutorial to help them along. Now, besides this, we've actually included the Windows 3.1 Program Manager and File Manager applications, so that if you want for a period of time to work with your existing user interface and then transition to the new user interface over time, you can do that. Now, this is a switch that we'll make available for IS managers and stuff. It's not a standard option. But again, this allows you to choose the migration speed to the new user interface yourself. And finally, we'll come back and talk a little bit about the thorough reliability testing that we're doing within Windows 95 to ensure it's a rock-solid upgrade for you. At this point, why don't we go ahead and take a look at the system that we actually upgraded to see what this migration looks like and some of how it turns out. So with that, Bob, why don't you walk me through what we've got going now?
Okay, Steve. Looks like the upgrade finished. In fact, what happened is I've already logged you on.
Okay.
So this is the first thing that the user will see after the upgrade's completed.
Okay.
And you notice this says, welcome to Windows 95, a little tip.
Right.
And you know, the first thing I'd like to have you do is you talked about the computer-based training. Why don't we take the Windows tour briefly?
Yeah, let's just start up the tour. So this is something that a new user, someone who wasn't familiar with Windows, could take and help them get started under Windows 95.
Exactly.
And it says this tour will take you through, click a topic to begin. All right, I'll click starting a program so I can figure out how to start programs. It says you can start programs easily by using the start button. Click the start button now. Well, let's assume I didn't see the start button, so let's just click on show me. Maybe it'll help me out. Oh, there it is, sure enough. Okay, I'll click the start button. It says click programs, I can do that. And click accessories now, okay. I'm getting the hang of this. Click calculator, that's my favorite. Oh no, it says, oops, try again. Oh, oops.
WordPad, Steve.
WordPad. You know, I really like the calculator, but let's try the, oh, WordPad, ah, look at that. Wow, it really helped me out there, even though I blew it 2 times.
The big save.
Okay, so let's open WordPad. This is very nice. Okay, I see. I'm going to go ahead and exit out. Oops, try again. See, if you click the wrong places, it helps you. So I'm going to go ahead and exit out of this. But you can see that for a new user, there's this tutorial that'll help you through. And it even talks a little bit more about exiting the tour. So I'll exit the tour. But it's really designed for a new user, and it even has, looks like a Windows 3.1 tutorial.
Right, so if a user at a later date wants to go back and take a look at a different tutorial, they can, no problem.
Good.
So, Steve, why don't we close this now?
Okay.
And what I'd like to do is make sure that everything that we said would migrate over did. First of all, why don't we look at the Start menu.
Okay.
And Programs.
Okay, let's see if I can find my Office.
There's your Office apps. And notice what happened is we migrated your Program Manager group files over automatically.
Yeah, so I see accessories, applications.
And there's that funny Ventura thing. Remember you were having EMS or conventional memory problems? Why don't we try starting that up and see what happens?
All right, let's give this a try now and see what happened. Yeah, it was out of memory before.
Yeah, you were like about 24K short, it said.
Right.
Okay.
Well,
there it switched to the DOS app.
Hey, it came into a normal, this looks familiar.
That looks okay.
Yeah, it looks like it's working. In fact, let's see if we can just load something real quick. Let's just see if we can load this channel. All right. Yep. Looks like it's working. And in fact, I think if I hit Alt-Enter, you can see that it'll actually run in a window if I want it to.
So, you know, this is by virtue of the fact that we have 32-bit protect mode drivers, Steve. All the networking stuff that you were running before in real mode, taking up conventional memory, we actually unload and run that in protect mode space. So you actually have more conventional memory now under Windows 95.
Well, why don't we take a look at that memory just to see what it is.
Okay.
I'm a little concerned that if we have all this memory, I hope my network is still working. So
Well, we'll take a look at that in a moment.
Let's make sure that...
I'm curious too. Let's see how much memory. Again, no tuning went on. This is just an automatic install over
yeah, this just was an upgrade.
620K free. Not bad.
That's a lot of memory for a straight upgrade. And
That's
you know,
right.
I didn't see anything on the networking. So let's quickly check and make sure that all of my the maps or my drives are still mapped.
Well, remember, we process your login script, so your F drive should be hooked up to our network server, and sure enough, there it is.
Yeah, it's still there. And in fact, let's go out. What the heck? Let's look in the network neighborhood and see if I can see the rest of these machines
You
now.
bet.
The NT server, the NetWare.
Yep, you can.
Wow, they're all here.
And again, you're running on top of our 32-bit network clients, so you're browsing all of the machines in your work group, Steve.
In fact, let's look at the properties for the NW server real quick, and I can see if I'm logged on.
There you go.
It says there it is, 6 of 10. In fact, this is we'll run a Who Am I? What the heck? And it says you are actually connected. Wow.
There you go.
So it looks like you used a batch file to do a hands-free installation. It increased my conventional memory. It still maintained all of my login scripts, so I still have the same servers mapped. It allowed me to use all of my applications, and everything seems to be running great now, all in 4 meg system.
That's right. That's the name of the game. Make it easy, simple. Don't make people lose things moving forward.
Great. Well, this is definitely a start in the right track for migration. Thanks, Bob. Okay. Well, I hope that gives you an idea. Now, clearly, we understand that there's a lot more work than just one machine upgrade, but a lot of the tools we're creating are going to make it easier for you to make that migration. So, let's talk a little bit now about justifying the move. We all know that ultimately migrating to Windows 95 is a business decision, and so we need some business reasons for making this migration. Now, there's a lot of groups out there starting to do studies to see what the cost of migration and ownership will be, and let's reference a few of those for you right now. One in particular that's gone on already is a Gartner Group total cost of ownership study. And if you get Gartner Group reports, be sure to ask for this and make sure you get a copy of it. What they did is basically look at the direct and indirect costs associated with migrating to Windows 95. And so these may not be things you see directly in your budget line items, but it's a total of reducing your support burden and increasing your control over the desktops, how these things will help reduce the cost. And what they found is they expect an average savings of $1,180 per user per year reduction in support costs versus Windows 3.1. This translates into about a 3 to 6 month payback. Now clearly, again, every company is different, so you'll want to, again, try to get a copy of this Gartner Group study and look at it and see how the model fits your individual needs. Now this study addressed only the savings associated with reducing your support burden, the integrated networking, the ability to manage the desktops. It didn't get a chance to look at how increased productivities of your end users will actually return or increase your return on investment. So another group has actually started to look at that, and we've done some studies to look at the productivity gains based on just having the user interface be more intuitive, have fewer steps, and just easier to work with. So things that people do commonly today, they can do with more speed. And that particular study didn't even take a look at what new applications will do going forward. And that study was done by an outside group for us, Usability Sciences, Inc. And what they did is they looked at a set of common tasks. They had users of Windows 3.1 sit down on the computer and do a set of very straightforward tasks, such as opening a file, copying something, printing something, and they recorded how long it took them to do that. They then migrated them to Windows 95, gave them basically the computer-based tutorial, and then had them do those same things under Windows 95. And then they timed how long it took. Now the first time they did it under Windows 95, they were about 10% slower than they were under Windows 3.1. However, by just the third time of working under Windows 95 with just a 20-minute tutorial, they were close to 50% more efficient than they were under Windows 3.1. So now we have a cost reductions or an increase in savings based on reducing our support burden, and our end users are being more productive and being more efficient in the UI. And then ultimately, again, we'll have new applications that will make them more efficient, and things like the remote access capability and being able to find new things. So we really think there's a strong business case for Windows 95, and you'll see more and more of this going forward. So with that, let's talk about what's next. What's next for us at Microsoft and what's next for you? What's next for us is testing, ongoing continuous testing. We have a huge development and test team here. Our development team has been self-hosted since 1992. And what that means is all of the developers and all of ourselves use Windows 95 desktops on our everyday basis. Basically, we eat our own dog food is the saying we use around here. And what this means is that obviously if a developer encounters problems using Windows 95, they're going to want to fix it because they have to use it on a day in and day out basis. We also have the largest test team at Microsoft. Testers are people that do nothing but try to break the program. There's over 150 testers at Microsoft working on Windows 95, and it's really a fun job because your whole thing is to try to break code, and trust me, they really have a good time doing that. And then we have a large number of automated simulation tools running around the clock testing the software. Now this is only the testing that's going on at Microsoft, and we recognize that that's just a small portion of the world. So we're doing a lot of outside real-world testing outside of what we do internally. To start with, our technical beta program, it's actually more than 40,000 people right now, which is more than 10 times the size of the beta we had for Windows 3.1. Now on top of that, our development team has got a program going called the 10,000 Upgrades program. This is where our developers and testers are going out and working with companies and installing Windows 95 in heterogeneous environments to see what kind of problems we encounter. This way we can really ensure that we're nailing down all of the different types of problems or things we can see in true heterogeneous environments with lots of different network operating systems and servers. And finally, coming up later on in the beginning of 95, we're going to have what's called the Windows 95 Preview Program. And the Preview Program is basically going to give people like yourselves a chance to get a head start in preparing for the migration to Windows 95. We're going to have over 400,000 people on that particular release worldwide. So that's going to put a lot more testing hours on Windows 95 before launch. So a combination of our internal testing, our technical beta testing, and the Preview Program means Windows 95 will have more than 75 million hours of test time before we go to launch. So that's what we're doing, is testing. This has got to be a rock-solid release before we go forward. So what can you do to get started in your preparation for migration? To start with, you can get educated on Windows 95. You should subscribe to WinNews. WinNews is a server we maintain here on site where you can download any publicly available information on Windows 95, as well as we have a list server where you can receive monthly updates on what's going on, and things like this show will be advertised. IS and Network Professional presentations, you're watching one now. You can also get these MSTV or Traincast broadcasts, and if you don't know how to get it in your local area, feel free to call this 800 number. And finally, Microsoft Education Services has a supporting Windows 95 beta course which you can get. Now, as you educate yourself, you'll want to start planning. And up on the WinNews server is the deployment guide, which will help you think about all the things you'll need to do in your migration to Windows 95. Now, after planning for it, the next thing you'll want to do is evaluation. At that point, you'll want to take advantage of the Preview Program. Now, to find out more information on the Preview Program, or at least be aware of when it's released, you need to subscribe to WinNews. WinNews is the way that we will inform people that the Preview Program is available. And so we suggest you subscribe to WinNews, and they'll post a slide at the end of this to show you exactly how to do that subscription. So after planning and evaluation, then you can look towards deployment. We are planning to release this commercially later on in 1995, and we're working very hard to ensure a stable release at that time. We know that you, as well as all of the ISVs and IHVs developing software and hardware, really need a rock-solid release the first time out, and that's what we're working hard to do, and that's what we're on schedule for our release later on this year. So let's go ahead and summarize what we've talked about today. We feel that Windows 95 is a major advance for the Windows standard. It's going to help you and your organizations be more productive and more efficient and get a greater return on your investment. We think that Windows 95 is a compelling upgrade for you and your organization because it's going to help you reduce your support burden, it's going to help you increase your control over the desktop, and it's going to help improve the productivity of your end users. We're working hard to ensure that Windows 95 is designed for a smooth migration, both in tools to help you deploy it, being able to do things like upgrade hands-free, as well as tools included within the product, such as the computer-based tutorial. Besides the tools that we've included in Windows 95, we really want to help you with the preparation here at Microsoft, so please take advantage of things like this Traincast, the Preview Program, the Windows 95 Resource Kit, and other means and people that you know to help you prepare for Windows 95. With that, I want to thank Bob for helping me out here today. And we'd like to thank all of you for joining us and following through this with us. So at this point, why don't we go ahead and go back to the other studio.
Thanks, guys. That was great. We hope you've learned how Windows 95 can help you reduce your support burden, give you more control over the desktop, and make end users in your company more productive. The Windows 95 Traincast is a complete series of programs we'll be bringing you over the next several weeks. Tune in next time for an in-depth look at how to cut costs with Windows 95. We'll bring you several recognized industry experts who will offer you specific strategies to prepare you in rolling out Windows 95 in your organization. Thanks for joining us. I'm Nancy Lewis, and I'll see you next time on Traincast 95.
If you'd like to subscribe to our electronic Windows 95 newsletter, WinNews, send internet email to enews@microsoft.nwnet.com with the words "Subscribe WinNews" as the only text in your message. WinNews file sections can also be found on most major online services and networks. To order a videotape of today's show, call 800-597-3200.